So we are back, and I believe we have a quorum, and we're back in our regular board meeting from exec session, and I think we'll go ahead and continue and move on. Yep, we've got a quorum. So, so are there any modifications to the agenda? I don't believe so, Sean, right? We're good, all right? So, and with that being said, I think we go right to public comment period, and if anyone wishes to speak, Sean, I'll let you do your speech.
Yes, I'm not sure. I believe that no one has contacted our board clerk at this point in time. We also realize that we're using new technology, and so if folks would like to speak, to either use the raise hand feature, send a chat, or find some other way to let us know, and we'll be sure to try to make sure we give folks their allotted time.
And Tricia, feel free to look at the group out there and see if there's anyone.
Thanks, Rob. I'm actually looking at the chat. I don't see anyone in the chat as of yet.
Great, and folks should know, not great, please feel free to contact us in any way possible, but there's the Let's Talk portal that we always recommend folks using, contacting board members either as a group through the board clerk, as a collective or individual board members, or finding ways to reach out as well. So if we don't hear from you during public comment this evening, we look forward to engaging over the next little bit.
Thank you, Sean, as always, and we'll keep moving.
Sorry to interrupt everyone. Liz Q has requested to speak.
Very good.
Sorry, I just saw that no one else was going to speak, so I just wanted to share like a positive, right? Like, let's do that. So as you know, I'm a science teacher at DeWitt Middle School and also a science department chair at DeWitt Middle School. And I feel very strongly that science is a hands-on curriculum, that kids can't learn science if they're not doing things. And so I just, we sent supplies home. It was a huge nightmare. It took so much time, a lot of help from NJHS students. Some former NJHS students are now your board reps. Happy to see them. And we did a lab. We did a lab with kids in school and kids at home, and we're doing another one right now. We're in the midst of it. And gosh, that's what we all needed. We all needed to just do some science wherever we are. And so I guess I just randomly wanted to shout out the bus drivers who delivered cups and food coloring, and our principal who bought cups and food coloring, and all the people who told me I was crazy when I said I was going to send home cups and food coloring and all the dish soap and all the things I sent home, and the kids and the parents for just rolling with this as we figure it out. It was one of the most rewarding moments in my career to do that and to have it work and to see the expression of wonder on kids' faces. That's why we're all here. So thanks to all those people for making it happen. And it actually can be done. It's hard. I'm still losing my mind. But those moments keep me going. So thank you.
Thank you, Liz, very much. Emily, anything else you see out there?
Nothing else has come through.
Very good, and so we'll transition to the student reps, and I believe there should be student reps joining us this evening.
We have Grace Lim.
Yes. Yeah, so hi, I introduced myself last time. I'm Grace. The other members didn't get to introduce themselves, so they're here as well, so if they would like to speak.
Hi, I'm Emma. My camera isn't on. Sorry, Adam. I'm a senior this year at high school. I'm 17. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm really excited to be a part of this. So yeah.
Hi, I'm Adam Saar. I'm a junior at IHS. I'm very excited to be a student rep this year, and I look forward to working with everyone.
Hi, I'm Alex. I was a board rep last year. I think that I'm really looking forward to working with the board again, and I think this is a great opportunity to do a lot of things, especially with the group that we have this year.
Thanks everyone. Do you want to weigh in with anything else right now, or shall we move on?
Yeah, I think Alex.
Alex, would you like to start?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just like a quick report on some of the clubs. So a large majority of the IHS clubs have started to make a return, even virtually, using like some of the tools that the district has like provided. Like I know that many of the competition clubs have found ways to compete online. Some of these include the math team. They did like a NIML test earlier this month. The brain team, who participated in both the September AQBL tournament and the Lone Star Northeast tournament, and they're even preparing to host their own virtual competition called Ithaca Fall, replacing their usually annual in-person tournament. The Science Olympiad is also beginning to prepare for the North Pocono competition that will be done virtually in December. The Tatler continues to thrive and publish its monthly issues with meetings over Google Meet. One problem with clubs is that gathering new members has been mostly done through like word of mouth or like through social media, where you're like posting information about the clubs, but it's like virtually impossible to spread information to people who you don't really know that well. So that's kind of an issue, but a possible solution might be forthcoming in the form of like a club fair for maybe newer students or students who want to get involved in more clubs. Hopefully then the IHS clubs can like thrive even more.
Could someone unmute Emma?
Okay, thank you. The second thing we had to bring up was some of the classes that are facing most like difficult logistic questions are the music classes. So the teachers have found a way to maintain musical excellence that is so standard of Ithaca. One of the ways is through a band recital that will be done virtually on November 12th at 7 p.m. Not only that, just as they did last summer, the band will create a recording of a piece made by combining the many recordings made by students after practice. Orchestra plans to do a similar thing.
Another, I guess, issue that we would like to work with you guys on is in terms of communication. As students, I think that it's critical now more than ever that there is very clear communication between the administration and the student body during this crisis. And I know that all of us are very concerned about the state of COVID at the school and exactly how well safety policies are working. So like things such as the HVAC ventilation system, we know that it's been installed, but we don't really know how it works. And we would love to kind of get some sort of like information on how it works and how it's doing. Another thing is contact tracing. With COVID having reached Ithaca High School last week, I think a lot of students would really appreciate kind of knowing a bit more about what's going on. Of course, naming names is not really a possibility and for privacy law reasons, etc. But I think a lot of us would really appreciate, and it would solve a lot of confusion to kind of have a little more clarification on the situations and what's going on. We think that it would be really useful for everyone if students got like emails about these things in their inboxes. We know that Twitter and other methods are used frequently, but from what I understand, students don't really see that information right away, but we do check our emails. So we would definitely appreciate kind of clarifying emails on that kind of thing and what's going on in the district.
Additionally, we are planning on creating a school-wide survey addressing questions related to hybrid learning, people's general experience, school safety, and communication between the board and students with this school year so far. Because I think it's important, especially during these times, we have inputs of the students considering their education. We were wondering if there are any questions the board would like to ask the student body. This would be a good opportunity for the board to directly find out and directly address some prevalent student issues. Yeah.
So thanks, everyone. Thanks for the update. And this is an opportunity for the board to respond and ask questions and provide some information. We do bring in administration voices from time to time to respond to questions. But Sean, I think now's a good time for board response. Thanks, everyone, and good to see you all, except for Emma. But good to hear from Emma and everyone today.
I'm sure my board colleagues have questions as well, and so we'll give that in a second. Just to say to the student reps how much I appreciated the email today to ask us about the process, about where on the agenda student reps should be giving their input and trying to find new and collaborative ways to engage in that. And so there'll be an invitation to a policy meeting. Our board agenda is set by district policy, and hoping that we can sort of think together about how does that work, what is the best place, and similar to what's taking place now. So it's not a unidirectional approach where you're giving a report out and then we move on, but how do we actually engage in that way? And so I know that Dr. Brown and Ms. Talcott and other folks are going to be thinking deeply about how to engage students with some of the information that happens. I want to thank you because it's something that we keep thinking about in any number of ways about how to better engage with information that happens in committees or happens in random places, but doesn't always get shared much more broadly. So just my appreciation for pushing us back.
And just to follow up on Sean, we always give IHS and LACS an opportunity to report out, and that is an item on the agenda. But you literally, and well, figuratively now, but literally when they're in a boardroom, you sit at the table with us at any time during a meeting, regardless of what the subject is. You can just raise your hand and you're recognized by the chair, who happens to be me, and you can weigh in. We want to hear your voices throughout the meeting, not just telling us what happened at IHS today, but what are we discussing and how does that affect you or others that obviously you represented at Guy and for LACS as well. We talk district-wide policies and district-wide items, and but yeah, we get into facilities and how we are going to manage the proper air exchange, and we certainly do that in facilities. And I'm going to ask that I'll ask our facilities folks and and others to get information out to the student body about what we discuss in some of these work sessions, but also feed that out to you by email and certainly not by Twitter. But
and Rob, before other board members ask questions, and so my apologies, we have Graham and Andrew, who are the LACS reps, on the call as well. And so Trish and Emily, I believe you have access to give them space to speak to us as well.
Yes, they've been made co-host, Sean. Let's see if I can unmute.
Yeah,
and
I'm
Dr.
unmuted now. sorry, Dr. Eversley Bradwell. Andrew and Graham are going to be talking a little bit later as part of school district business from LACS.
Hey, folks, this is Eldred. I have a question. Hello, Grace and Alex and Andrew and Graham and Emma, who we can't see but hear, and I forgot someone. Here's my question / suggestion. As Rob just said, we do most of our work through committees, even though it may seem to you all that we do it in the public meeting because that's when you're with us. If you guys came up with a 5 or 10-point plan of your priorities, I'm sure Sean and Rob and even Dr. Brown will be able to sit down with you and figure out how those priorities can be, how you can learn about those priorities and then affect them given our committee structure. So that might be a good use of your time. It might be a good use of our time to interact with you because, as everyone's saying, we know you're smarter than just sitting at that table at the board meeting. So why don't we try that this year? Come up with your priority list and run it by our executives, and they can put you in the right place so you can move your agenda forward. Thanks.
This is, and I just want to say thank you for coming to the meeting, to the students, also to Liz for sharing your your innovations and your perseverance. And I just want to say, to pick up on what Eldred was just saying, I think that's a great idea, Eldred. I like the idea of the student reps bringing in some of the issues that are really concerning right now, because I think you provide an insight that I can only guess at from the outside. So your voice is just so critical right now. And as much as educators are trying to work out under this incredibly unique situation, you're in an incredibly unique educational experience also. And so to find out what's working, what's not working, what you need to know, how you need things communicated, I think that's really crucial information. So really, really appreciate you sharing that. And I really do like Eldred's concept of kind of, if you set some priorities and then figure out how we can kind of prioritize them within the board.
Thanks, Ann. Others?
Hi, everyone. This is Chris. I just want to thank you for being here and sharing everything you shared, and especially around communication and understanding the contact tracing and how things operate. I've got an ask, really, and I'm a broken record with this, trying to identify the gaps in those students that were missing, and from a student perspective, because how and why are they feeling that they're not getting what they need during this pandemic time, and really, how can we troubleshoot that? So, and you folks could kind of be our eyes and ears and what you're hearing back and what the solution is, because this is a collaborative effort. And that's what I would ask from you folks. Thank you so much.
This is Pat Wazaloo, and I apologize. I'm having some internet connectivity problems today that I haven't usually had, but I want to thank you all for coming to the board, returning to service on the board. I love the idea of a student survey. I'm not thinking on my feet very quickly, so I don't know what I would want to ask now. But I agree with my fellow board members that we want very much to hear what students have to say about this experience, as well as what teachers have to say about it and how it can be made better. And finally, I really was overjoyed to hear that clubs and activities are coming back. And that you are finding ways to connect with each other and bring in new classmates virtually. It's a tough time. It can be a lonely time, and school is not just about learning. It's about building those bonds and building communities. and it can be done virtually. I think your generation is way better at it than some of our older generations, but you know, I think of all the friends that my kids have where they're, you know, hundreds of miles away and on screens, and keeping a positive attitude and trying to make things better for your fellow classmates is just, it's heartwarming. So thank you all.
Rob, before we go, I do have a question. What does our board reps think is the most important thing for us as a board to know right now about your experience?
Yeah, so I guess I'll take that question. So right now we are in the process of creating a survey towards the students at IHS with all of those questions. So next week we'll have all of that information.
Thank you, Grace.
Thanks, Grace.
Before we end this, I just want to ask Liz if she's still on. Is the next part of the science experiment going to send Coca-Cola bottles and Mentos home? That'll be fun.
No, am I unmuted? I don't know. We have so many better activities that we do. So, you know, that one's good for YouTube, but we maybe some of my former students who are here can attest to that. But we go one more.
I just know the parents would appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you all.
Oh my gosh, the parents. I am so thankful to the parents who are allowing us the space to do these things.
Hi everyone, Nicole here. I want to thank Liz for taking a leap of faith, being creative, innovative, thinking about ways in which for kids, children, young adults to use their hands. I know that my kids appreciate getting little care packages dropped off by the bus drivers. So big shout out to the bus drivers that are doing that labor. I want to thank all of our student reps that are here from IHS and LACS. I think student voice is super important. Speaking personally, I appreciate hearing from you all, and it's as some other board members mentioned, it's something that we continue to think about every year, how to make sure that we're not just getting a report from you all, but that you all feel involved in the process and that you're able to give feedback and we're able to hear that feedback because we care about your experiences. That's why we volunteer so many hours. In terms of questions, Grace, I would say some questions that quickly come to mind is just wanting to know how students would describe their in-person, hybrid, and virtual experience. How would you all define a successful hybrid model? What would that look like? What's missing from the learning experience compared to years before? Thinking about socially engaging, how do we engage? How do you all engage with each other or with school? How are you finding creative ways to engage with school if you're not involved in clubs? Not everyone wants to be involved in a club or feels safe or social. So what other ways can the board or the admin team be thinking about in regards to cultivating spaces where students are able to engage? I know my daughter's in middle school, she's in 7th grade, and she said that she has probably 2 to 5 kids in her class. So how can we think about ways for students to be bonding with one another in this virtual world?
Thanks, Nicole. Any other board member right now? And we look forward to the interaction and collaboration with our student reps, as always. Anything else right now?
I just wanted to add something.
Hey, Emma.
Someone asked earlier what we think the biggest issue right now is within the student body, and I would just like to bring up that it's difficult for students to always know what's going on. I don't know what's the best way. I think it's very much like things are changing constantly right now and things are always up in the air and we don't know what's going on. And I think that one issue we as students face is knowing what's coming next when something changes, if that makes any sense. But yeah, just communication and knowing if things have changed and what has changed.
Could I ask a question, just a follow-up question on that? You mentioned email. Is that how, like, in terms of like knowing what's going on, and is it how you're getting or where you're getting the information, or specific type of information that you wish you knew?
Right. So for many students, we check email pretty consistently. I think if anyone else wants to say anything on that, feel free to do so. I think email is the biggest way that we would get any information. But I've talked to my fellow board reps and I've talked to my peers, and I think we had that last schedule change, I think a week ago. And I didn't receive an email. So I think that it would be like a part of our survey. We could see how many people are getting the emails that they should be getting, and how many people, how people feel about how they get most of their information.
I would like to add, I think, like, I know that most of the information is like put on the website pretty immediately. The problem is just that it's very hard to find most of the time. And so I think basically what as students were asking for is more direct communication when things happen, rather than it like being put out and us having to like go and find it.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Emma. Anything else right now?
I know a minute ago, Graham had his hand raised.
Can people hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So this is something at least at LACS, me and Andrew have been working on, like way back in the spring, is we made an Instagram account called Ox Announcements, where basically we were taking information that we knew from being part of the planning group, or also then like when school was starting, just kind of like the mass emails that went out to like everybody at the school, we would at least like, we're kind of reformatting them and then putting them on the Instagram account, since more students or even like most of the staff were checking that. And then mixed in, we're doing like the polls and questions, like, do you have any questions about anything that's going on? Or how do you feel about X, Y, or Z? And really just trying to provide as many opportunities for people to have answers to their questions, and to also just have the information on like as many platforms as possible, like just spamming them with, they're probably not happy at this point because it's so in their face, hopefully. But just like, since that's a platform more people are checking more frequently, it's kind of mixed in the feed. So it's a little bit more natural and effortless, which I think has been working pretty well. A lot of students and staff have liked the Instagram account.
Graham, I'm Moira Lang, and I am the liaison for LACS. So I'm wondering, can I get on that Instagram account?
Yeah, it's called Ox Announcements.
Ox Announcements, okay.
Yeah, and the profile picture is an ox, and there's like 170 followers.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Graham. Thanks, Maura. Anyone else before we move on?
Rob, I don't believe we introduced the LACS reps, or did I miss that?
And I'm so sorry.
Nicole, what I think is happening is they're going to be speaking as part of board business and the update coming in the next agenda item.
Okay.
Is that correct, Ms. Todd?
Yeah.
I apologize for jumping in.
Yes, no worries. My apologies for the lack of clarity. That's on me. So the LACS process has not been completed in regard to selecting the board reps. Graham and Andrew are here graciously to share regarding school district business.
Oh, thank you for the clarification, Lily. That's helpful. But we're very happy that there's 2 LACS students here tonight. We're going to get to that soon, but we do need to go to the consent agenda. If there's nothing else, let's do the consent, and so we can move on and hear from Dr. Brown and then get to our business. So the consent, there we go. Agenda is in front of you. We just need a motion and a second, and then we can address any questions regarding that consent agenda. I said it that time, Sean.
I'll move the consent agenda. Now you've got me struggling with it, Rob.
I'll
Say
second.
consent agenda 3 times fast.
Second by Pat, and I think I'm running out of water. That's why I'm losing it. But moved by Maura, second by Pat, and variety of items on it. Personnel report. We are still appointing and hiring staff to meet the needs of the district and hybrid learning. So we continue to push forward in that way. And Chris, anything special that we need to speak to regarding finance?
Nothing really to speak to. We've got a salt de-icing bid that we do every year. It's pretty standard. The tax I'm not going to pronounce this right, certiorari, which is actually an assessment refund that you don't see that one for that amount too often. And then there's some monies from the Parks Foundation for teachers' aid supplies and a lot of other things in there. And also the treasurer's report from August.
No, thanks, Chris. And I would point out that the bid is being awarded to a local entity and a local company and a local store, meaning Agua. So that is locally owned. So we appreciate that. Any other questions? If not, Tricia, would you please call the roll?
Rob Ainsley,
Yes.
Sean Eversley Bradwell,
Yes.
Eldred Harris,
Yes.
Nicole LaFave,
Yes.
Moira Lang,
Yes.
Chris Malcolm,
Yes.
Ann Reichlin,
Yes.
Patricia Wazzle.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, everyone. So consent agenda is approved, and Dr. Brown, we are ready for you.
Yes, sir, Ms. Avery. Thank you for the opportunity. And tonight, I wish to share a few images, if I may. I'm going to play this. Okay. And first, this is the first time we've been together since the School Board Appreciation and Recognition Week. I wish to say thank you for the greatest volunteers on the planet. Your efforts to be board members in our school district at this time is much appreciated. And I just want you to know how much we love and appreciate all that you do. This is the time of year where we typically would be getting together to go to the annual convention. It was supposed to have been in New York City this year, and unfortunately that convention has gone virtual. And I know there are several board members who are planning to attend that event this week. And as part of that event, I hadn't shared before, but I'm sure folks have seen maybe in the brochures, our efforts to empower voice and choice, student voice and choice in our school district has been recognized across our state, and particularly by our School Boards Association. We've had young people featured on the cover of the association's newsletter over the last couple of years. And on Thursday, I am going to be facilitating a student panel. And you can see on the screen, the title is Diverse and Equal, A Student Perspective. We're going to have young people, Kaji and Saba particularly, are going to join a young person from the Long Island area. But we're going to be just talking about how can young people advocate and bring issues around diversity and inclusion and equity to the board, to administrators, to their teachers' attention. And how do you facilitate that conversation? So we have young people who've been doing that. We have a board and a community who is open and listens and actually acts to change things. So again, our efforts have been recognized, and we will be presenting on Thursday at the time that's on the screen. So folks who already signed up to go, I hope you can log in. And if you aren't signed up for the conference, I think I can still get you in for just this session. So please make sure we connect on that. And finally, I don't know, I get excited about stuff like this. Maybe since I've been a superintendent, I've learned a lot more than I ever thought I'd need to know about capital projects. But this image is exciting. This is as of today at 3 o'clock when we have new turf down on our field. It's beautiful. So if you get a chance to drive by or walk by the stadium, check it out. It looks great. These are from far above, but down on the field, it looks even better. Just wanted to alert the community that the capital projects are coming together and they're evolving. And the field for me was a beautiful thing to see today. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And again, thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts and some announcements tonight. And I look forward to transitioning to the next item on the agenda, if that's okay, Ms. Ainsley. All right, and I want to make sure we have everybody. Ms. Talk is here. All right. And this next item, I wish to do some brief framing and also some clarification and just help folks understand where we are right now. I'm looking forward to hearing from our students tonight who are going to talk about in-person and distance learning and how it's going and some things we've learned together in the midst of what has been a challenging last 6 or 7 months. And some educators are going to share some great things too. But to say to folks, we have a model right now, and I've been saying to folks the last couple of days, we have an in-person model and a virtual model, and we have something that's a combination of both. But we know the in-person model is different for us right now. Adhering to CDC guidelines has pushed us to think about how we deliver instruction in person differently, and our educators have stepped up and have done that well. That model, frankly, though, has had a 200+ year head start on the other ones. And those are 2 other models and modalities that we are getting better and better with each and every day. But I keep reminding folks, it's not something that was part of our strategic plan. It's not something we planned to transition to. We had to shift to these models in the midst of a crisis. But again, I can't thank our educators enough. And you heard from one of our lists today. Educators have stepped up and they're doing amazing things for our young people and are getting better and better each day. Now, as we talk about what it's going to look like for the remainder of the year, what it will look like next year, I'm saying, I don't know. It's important for us to recognize that, I heard some folks earlier talking about, what's going to happen, how can we predict what's going to happen? It's been impossible to predict exactly what's going to happen. But I can tell you, we're committed to being better and better each day with our in-person approaches and our virtual approaches. And we are building out some frameworks to enhance both. And I'm going to get to that in a second. But first, clear up some things people are saying and may have heard. What are we committed to right now in the fall, where we are right now? We have a 5-day-a-week in-person elementary model. And I need folks to hear that we're committed to that model. We want to keep that model in place throughout the school year. And that's in the name of equity. Yes, we have young people who need to be in our spaces 5 days a week. They signed up for that. They need that. They're depending on it. And as a school district, I want you to hear from me. We're committed to providing that experience for the remainder of this year. I've heard people say, are you thinking about moving to a hybrid approach or going 2 or 3 days a week? No, we have no plans to do that. But again, I'm also learning as superintendent in the midst of a global pandemic. You sometimes have to eat your words and go back on them, but I'm here to tell folks, I don't anticipate us moving away from that model with the information I have right now. Yes, we're going to continue to talk to families. We're going to have focus groups. We're going to put out some surveys. We're going to learn from folks as we've done since day one. We're going to entertain if folks wish to move from an in-person experience to a virtual one. That's much easier to accommodate right now. And there will be families who are going to wish to move from the virtual experience to an in-person one. And we've been talking to our administrators and we feel like we can support that in time, over time as well. But I wanted folks to hear from me tonight. No, we aren't looking to take away the 5-day in-person. We're one of the few districts in our state that's able to do that right now. And we're doing it in the name of equity, and there are families who are depending on it. And with everything in my heart right now, we want to stay there. And we want to enhance all of our models. Going back to, I think it was February of 2011, we rolled out what was a teaching and learning framework. And we said at the time, we were going to be innovative, we were going to be culturally responsive, and we were going to be inclusive with the ways in which we were going to deliver in-person instruction in our school district. That was in 2011. And we're still working on how do we enhance curriculum, how do we enhance instruction pedagogy, and how do we assess it? And that's evolved for us. We're now having that same conversation about not only in-person instruction, but also distance learning as well. And I want to say to folks, good teaching is good teaching. Our best educators are evolving to make even something that they had no idea we would be doing at this time last year. They're making it better each and every day. And we're working now to put together a framework for distance learning. And that will come along with all the resources, all the intellectual capital, all the time, all the thinking we can put forth to put things in written word and documents, and to try some things out in a classroom, to take some risk. And you're gonna hear from some folks today who are doing just that. So again, I wanted to frame where we are right now with distance learning, and folks are asking what kind of resources and what kind of thinking we're putting towards it. Yeah, we're putting a lot towards it. And yeah, we're trying to make up 200 plus years on the in-person model experience, and we're making up quickly. And you're gonna hear from some folks today who are trying some things and taking a risk. And I wish to commend them for doing just that. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Talcott, to introduce our special guest to talk about what they're doing and what they're doing for young people in our spaces.
Thanks so much. I'm gonna have Dr. Jan Bryman, who is our administration officer, provide a little bit more context, and then I'll jump in with some introductions. Thanks so much. Go ahead, Dan.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to share the start of our framework we're looking at for distance learning. It'll of course be structured around curriculum, instruction, and assessment. And for curriculum, we're looking to create a distance learning framework that will be grounded in the historically responsive framework from Dr. Gholdy Muhammad. It would include identity development, skills development, intellectualism, and criticality, excuse me. We also want to work, of course, to connect to our project-based learning, looking at case studies that are existing case studies and anti-marginalization work. And for instruction, you know, first and foremost, we want to ground this in what works best in education and what we value. We value the strength of teacher-student relationships. Through John Hattie's work, we know that this has a very powerful impact on student learning. And in distance learning, we'll look at high impact instructional strategies, such as student collaboration. Students can participate in activities, of course, not limited to reciprocal teaching, jigsaw, and there's many other examples. Feedback, creating a culture where you celebrate errors, and a culture where you expect errors. Looking at student feedback through virtual feedback, through voice feedback, and through video feedback. And of course, looking at small groups and seeing how these small groups can be differentiated through work on systems and structures, and of course, instructional strategies. We also want to utilize Shiraki Holly's work that we've spent some time on, culturally, linguistically responsive strategies. This will help to strengthen relationships and also increase participation in distance learning. And for assessment, we also know this collective teacher efficacy, which is, it's a fancy way of saying that the shared belief that through action together, we can positively influence student outcomes. And basically saying that if we believe we can make a difference, we can. And through that work, through our PLC work, by setting goals and focusing on growth instead of proficiency, we can develop that assessment. Now for outreach and collaboration on this, we'll be engaging teachers, students, admin, parents, and caregivers to engage in this process in our distance learning collaborative. We'll look at tools, strategies, best practices, and lessons and units we can share with teachers and other feedback. We've had a lot of input that teachers want strategies that they can use the next day in their classroom. So one example of that might be showing teachers how to use the new group feature in Google Meet to help facilitate small groups happening. Those are some strategies that we could work on immediately, as well as many, many others. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Lily for the professional development opportunities.
Thanks, Dan.
Yep.
So we, of course, have a number of professional development opportunities. I spoke last time about some of those in terms of standalone professional development, real-time support that's in buildings now. So Zach Lind and Matt O'Donnell have been providing that support throughout the past weeks and the coming weeks as well. And we're starting a pilot. We've been holding office hours where we began and are continuing virtual grade level PLCs. And we're also leveraging BOCES in a number of ways and partnering with a company called Better Lessons that works to strengthen distance learning approaches and blended learning approaches, which is great. We've been meeting with them and we're excited to begin our work with them. And lastly, some of our teachers are providing on-demand mentorship to their colleagues, which has been fabulous and has already started. I am going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to the folks of the hour, actually. So an amazing first grade teacher who was phenomenal in the brick and mortar setting and is really creating fabulous learning environments for young people in not one, but two school settings now. Patty Burr, and she has been a longtime South Hill teacher. And then we're going to hear from Graham and Andrew from LACS. I'm going to turn it over to the incredible and fabulous Ms. Patty Burr.
Thank you so much, Lily, and thank you to the board and to Dr. Brown for giving me this opportunity to share with you a sneak peek into what life looks like in a distance learning classroom in first grade. The framework that I want to share, and I think Dr. Brown, what you shared already today about good teaching is good teaching. And so you'll see that paralleled throughout my slide deck with what are good teaching practices in person and how does that look similar in a distance learning setting. So as Ms. Talcott mentioned, I'm a first grade teacher at both South Hill and for Enfield Elementary this year. One of the parallels is relationship building. So forever and a day, I have launched the school year by getting to know my students, by getting to know their hopes and dreams. What do they want to be able to say they accomplished in June? And then taking those hopes and dreams, building on one another's hopes and dreams, and really creating this sense of what do we have to do to get to where we want to be? How can we encourage each other within our classroom culture to support and meet those individual hopes and dreams, but also our collective hopes and dreams together? And so we have our social emotional curriculum. This year we're using Ruler, which is exciting both in person and in a distance learning situation where students are creating a classroom charter. This is an example of first grade thinking. And as you look through, these are the rules that students in one of my cohorts created for themselves to get to where we want to be. And you'll see a lot of the rules that students have created could be in person rules as well. Be kind and loving, try your hardest. Some things that are specific to distance learning, like raising your hand to talk, share the air and mute when it's not your turn. But other rules that I've heard in an in-person setting too, be safe and careful with your body. This cohort wants us using quiet voices, being mindful with our school supplies, listening to one another. We've had great fun practicing different faces, meeting faces, silly faces. And when we're learning, this cohort really wants us to use a meeting face and sharing our feelings each and every day. We're using that mood meter as a tool on Seesaw to be able to check in with our feelings. But a lot of these ideas, this sort of roadmap or blueprint to get us to where we want to be, could be similar in an in-person situation. The second piece, and I heard this brought up already, is this idea of assessment. What does assessment look like in person? How can we reimagine that? And what does it look like in a distance learning format? And so, yes, there is still assessment. It's embedded in our everyday lessons. My students are very young. I try and make sure it's developmentally appropriate for young learners, for young readers, mathematicians. It's game-based and interactive. I have an image of one of the games that I use to assess less vowel sounds. So it's no longer paper, pencil, and we're checking down a list. How can I embed that in my instruction, and what does my data look like to see who has which vowel sounds? I want to make sure that my assessment is rich in the standards and that it's driving my instruction. Again, that idea that what I'm doing today is going to change what I do tomorrow. What is the application of the assessment? This slide is an example of an assessment that is made. So this was made in collaboration with one of our wonderful Ithaca College work study students who worked with me last year and has continued on board this year. So what has turned into a word game with popcorn kernels are actually the Fontes and Pinnell high frequency words that we're doing as a slide deck, and students are able to go through, and if they get the word correct, it goes in their popcorn bucket. If not, it goes back into the popcorn pile. And I'm able to differentiate and create shared slides that I can share with families so that students can keep the learning going when they're not with me. And it's fun, it's game-based. This idea of targeted instruction has always been true in an in-person classroom setting. How can I engage my students in intentional, targeted instruction that meets our grade level standards, but also is taught in a way to meet individual student needs? This is, I think, in some ways even more important in a distance learning setting. I have 90 minutes with my class synchronously or asynchronously in a day. So how am I going to get the most out of building this culture, this inclusive culture, this community, and also deliver targeted experiences that will allow my students to hit on their learning targets and to hold themselves accountable at the end of our lesson. So these are examples of slides that I lifted where I'm being transparent with students for each lesson. What is our learning target? And at the end, how can you show me that you have grown and toward your target? So inviting students to be a part of that process. And then finally, collaboration with families, collaboration with colleagues. So the first piece that I'm sharing with you are learning targets for a week. So this was developed in collaboration with my colleagues at South Hill. We meet weekly to come up with learning targets in each area. And then I share this part with families. I think it's so important that they know what we're aiming for together so that they can keep the learning going when we are not together. The learning bingo sheet is what the student experience is. So this is dropped into a Seesaw account. We also send home paper copies. Thank you to bus drivers who are delivering them to our students along with kits of materials each week. You'll notice some of the activities are definitely using iPads, virtual base, Seesaw activities, and some of them are not at all. You know, using a TENS frame sheet and going out in nature to collect different objects and put them in the TENS frame, things that will hit on each content area. And this experience is shared with our in-person learners who have access to the bingo board and use it during times that they're not working with their teacher, and also shared with students virtually so that they can keep the learning going asynchronously. So that idea of collaboration with grade level colleagues, but also with families, how can we be transparent about what we're aiming for? So those are the parallels that really stood out for me between in-person learning and distance learning and good teaching. Thanks.
So Patty, as a former first grade colleague of yours, it's such an honor to get to see what you have created in this digital world, knowing what, as one of our colleagues, Mary Grover, always says, your classroom is magical, right? And now you're creating a magical experience within the distance learning environment. I really appreciate it. So that's if it's okay with the board, we could either, we could just continue on and here we heard a little bit about elementary distance learning, and then we thought we would transition to secondary and then take questions and engage in some of that back and forth. So at this time, I would love to turn it over to Graham and Andrew, who, as we know, are LACS students, and they were very involved with the reopening planning group, which was had a very cool name. It's called ACDC at LACS. And they met throughout the summer and then have really taken on incredible leadership roles within the the community, and they are willing to share with us some examples of things that are going well in regard to virtual and hybrid learning, and some things that would be great to shift. So Graham and Andrew, I'm going to turn it over to you all, and then we'll take questions and comments from the board for both Ms. Burr and Graham and Andrew.
Awesome. Well, the way we planned it out, I will go first, and then Graham will follow up after me. I took some shorthand notes. So after we met, Billy, Graham and I don't know. Actually, I don't know what Graham did. I don't have any of this. I have some classes with him. I don't know what he did in his other classes, but I know I went around and I asked a couple people, what they thought, and I spoke with some teachers and some friends of mine. And so I kind of made a short, 4 bullet point list of some of the big things that I think are a problem. My first note is classes long. So yeah, that was pretty self-explanatory. Classes are long. Classes used to be, 45 minutes. At the time I thought that was long. Now they're 90 minutes. That is really quite a lot of time. So one issue that I have is classes are long and they meet twice a week, which means that you have to, I'm in a class called Global Feminism, which is a very fun class. But the only issue is most of the class is discussion based, and we have discussions, and then we have 2 or 3 or 4 days in between the discussions, and there's not the repetition of a schedule is really useful for memory retention, and that we don't have that. And one thing the teachers have done at our school is when we have a common practice at LACS, when you are teaching a double period class, usually teachers will break in the middle of the class and take a 5-minute break, when everyone, during the passing period, and everyone can go outside, go to the bathroom, hang out outside the classroom, just kind of hang around and relax for a few minutes, and then everyone comes back. And that's common practice, and that's kind of what most teachers have adopted. So most of the classes now have a break in between, which is a good practice, and it kind of addresses the problem, but not really. So one of my issues is classes are long. They're few and far between, but also very long. So as soon as we can get back to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 period schedule, that's a pretty big bonus for me. My second one is in-person good. Again, pretty self-explanatory. In-person is good. I'm just going to share a little personal anecdote. I'm in math class right now, and it's pre-calc or something. And I was learning, we were doing it online, and I was like, I have no idea what math is. What even is a square root? Online learning for that class specifically, for all classes, but for that class specifically, was not working for me. I was not understanding it. I wasn't really comprehending this stuff. And I was just having a lot of trouble knowing what was going on and stuff. And then we moved into in-person, and I don't know what it is about it, because the class didn't change, but being in person, I think it was just the ability that I could focus so much more, so much better in person. And I'm like, okay, this is math. It's not too hard. I understand what's going on. Of course, I only have that, once out of every 2 classes, but it's better than it was before. So in person is definitely good. And one of the interesting things I've seen, actually, according to the polls that we've done on the Oxford Announcements page, and just polls that I've seen in general, the student base is split about 50-50. 50% say that they want to do digital, and 50% want to say they want to go all in person. And I think that's within context, so you have to keep that in mind, but still, that's interesting. I would have thought more people would have wanted to go back in person. So it's interesting. I know a lot of my friends, digital is working very well for them. Personally, digital doesn't work. But I think the idea of having options is good. Of course, the only issue with that, I've been talking with some teacher friends, and I'm also TAing a class, which brings me to my next point. 3 groups is difficult. Managing 3 groups of students at once is a challenge, even for the best teachers. And it's you can't really split the class into 2, one cohort that comes in, Monday, Tuesday, and have them do asynchronous Thursday, Friday, and then, vice versa with the other cohort, because it's the 3rd cohort that's all digital. So juggling the 3 different groups is a challenge, and we try as hard as we can, but sometimes students can just fall off the truck, and that's like, we want to avoid that at all costs, of course. So it's like we've got to put more effort into making sure that everyone is staying on board with the courses and up to date on their work, which of course, you know, like there's no getting around that. That's what you do. But it is a challenge for teachers to do. And what is really accentuating this challenge, at least at LACS, we don't have any new equipment that was funded by the district. We don't get a lot of funding. We definitely don't get anywhere near the funding that IHS gets, which is reasonable because we have like nowhere near the amount of students. But we're still running on not a lot of funding. I know at least for the theater group, you know, I was in that for a significant period of time. The theater group runs entirely off of their own, not entirely, entirely is a stretch. They run significantly off of their own funds, which, you know, we make from charging, like asking for a voluntary donation at the door, which, you know, it covers most of the stuff. And we do get, you know, significant grants from the, you know, the fine arts people, which is very good. But, you know, we still have to fund some of that. And that also has happened during distance learning. I know in one of my classes, my teacher has, you know, she bought herself a microphone that would pick up the whole room because her computer microphone couldn't cut it. That was $30 out of pocket, which is not a lot, but it amounts to a lot. And it's a problem. A lot of my teachers are saying, we don't have the new equipment and we don't have the new training. So I know at LACS, we're in need of resources and training for distance learning. And I want to counterbalance that with, we've gotten new staff members for the staff members who have to stay at home. You know, I've met with them. You know, I've spoken with Michael and Simone. They're two new staff members and new subs that cover my English and, you know, science class respectively. Very nice people, and they're pretty cool and they're pretty fun to hang out and chat with. And that's good, but we need more. I wouldn't say we need more staff people, but we need, you know, funding and resources for microphones and cameras and the Chromebooks. The Chromebooks are good enough for Google Chrome, and I think as school computers under normal circumstances they work very well, but they're not powerful. They're just not powerful enough to handle being on a Google Meet. So one of the issues, you know, a lot of teachers say, okay, everyone get on the Google Meet in class. That doesn't really work because Chromebooks crash, internet fails, batteries die. It's I think one of the things we need is like resources and training for teachers to understand how to really work well and effectively in the digital environment. So to sum it up, classes are long and far between. In-person is very good, despite that. Juggling 3 groups is difficult, and new equipment is needed. New equipment and training. Those are the bullet points that I wanted to hit. So take it away, Graham.
Okay. I agree with most of what Andrew said. And I guess the part about talking with other people and seeing how they're experiencing all this is something I can speak about. These are like 3 or 4 different people that I'm not going to obviously specify who, but I guess I'll just talk a little bit about. Like I've kind of seen their experience with all of this types of learning change over time, and it's kind of interesting. In the first person, over the summer, we were doing community service work together over on West Village, and they were really looking excited to going back fully in person because like in the spring, the distance learning hadn't really worked. And then long story short, they come for like the first week and it's super challenging. They couldn't like snack in class like normal, or they couldn't drink water. So they were getting like headaches and fatigue and all this stuff. And that was leading to issues with concentrating in the class. And it was just sort of this ripple effect of all these awful things that then now they're fully virtual. Because the in-person structure wasn't working in the way they thought it would. And this was a student who's a senior. And then the second person that I've kind of heard from is a teacher, and they were part of the planning group over the summer, and they were working to do all of this work of like reopening the school. And then even today, earlier in the hallway, I talked to them, and they were saying, sort of like I was asking, like, well, what do you think's working or what's not working? And they were kind of quick to say that it's not working. Mainly like the in-person, because the commute is too far, and what it sounded like was that there's not enough of a incentive to coming in person if they have the option to, just because there's so many hoops and it's so stressful, and it's like, it's not normal, and it's not as efficient as I think most people thought in person would be. And then the next person is also a teacher, and basically they were saying that it would actually be more difficult, they think, to go back to teaching 8 periods a day, at least in the current COVID edition school with like 4 people per classroom and having to wipe stuff down every day. I mean, like between classes and use of items. That basically 8 periods would be way too overwhelming and crazy, and that 3 is actually working pretty well. And this is a fine arts teacher, and one of the reasons they liked this, I mean, the current model of like 90-minute blocks, is because it actually gives enough time where you don't just get everything out and then it's time to pack up, but you can actually get into what you're working on for a nice amount of time. And so each of these people, originally it sounded like wanted to do, like they were excited about the in-person learning. And I don't mean to just shed like a negative light on all of this, because I think there's some positive parts to all of this. But overall, from what I'm experiencing, at least in terms of school, is that there's so much effort and time and energy that's put into going to school in person, but it's not really worth it. And that's coming from a place of like, I have the option to be at home. And I know for some people that's something that can't happen. But at least for me, in person is a lot of effort. But to say, I guess, something positive, all the moments of like in the hallway, just passing somebody and saying hi, or how are you doing, or what do you have for lunch, like all of those moments, they're back. And that's really pretty awesome, where you're not just clicking between a screen, and you're actually with people. And I guess the spin off, like, part about the screen and clicking through, Andrew touched on this a little bit about being in class on the computer. I think a lot of people also that are doing in person were doing it so they didn't have to be on a screen all day. And when you go into a class and the teachers want you to just log onto the screen, that kind of comes back to the point, like, why even go in person if you're just going to be staring at a screen, and it's going to be even worse with lag. Sanitation is an issue, like the threat of contracting the virus is higher. And there's once again, there's so much more effort put into something you could do 6 feet away from your bed. So overall, what I've observed is that in-person is working really well for a sense of community and just being together as a school, seeing people you know that aren't in your Google Meets. But in terms of learning, a lot of effort, a lot of time, and a lot of energy is spent that isn't really coming back out, or that it's just kind of, it's taking a lot to run this kind of machine, but the results aren't as great as maybe people would want them to be. So that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you, everyone, so much for sharing. Thank you, Graham and Andrew, for the I think, really broad perspective, right? The student perspective, and also within the community, right? Folks have a lot of different experiences and perspectives in relationship to where we are in the era of a global pandemic, right? So we heard from Patty Burr earlier in regard to elementary and really setting up that in-person transition to distance learning and some of those common elements as well. And heard from Graham and Andrew. We'd love to open it up for questions from the board.
I would also like to contribute. A lot of the issues in terms of like adjusting to online / hybrid models, I think I'll definitely apply to IHS as well. In terms, so I'm a full online student, and I've definitely kind of noticed how teaching has definitely changed from when everything was online and to when hybrid started. Most of my teachers actually were able to do a pretty good job of juggling both groups. Although in terms of equipment, I think it would definitely be really beneficial for teachers to be provided more equipment such as mics and better cameras, because some of my teachers who weren't able to get themselves equipment are having to kind of just like sit in front of the computer and like talk to us, and then that seems to be reducing the quality of learning for the kids in school, because then they also have to be on their computers and stuff like that, instead of being able to learn directly from the teacher, even though like they're in the same room. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Thanks, Adam. Board members, feel free to weigh in.
Well, I actually just have a question for any of the students. It sounds like incredibly challenging both in school and out of school, but you are keeping a really good attitude about it. But one of my questions, I hear that you're saying one thing that would help would be better technology. And what else would make the in-school or the remote school work better for you, do you think?
I'd like to take this one if no one else minds. I know one thing that would make it better a lot for me is it kind of goes hand in hand with technology, but better training for the teachers. Like one of the huge misconceptions that I've seen is about specifically, this is gonna be a case study. Specifically, like echo and feedback loops and what causes that. How do you avoid it? Because like everyone joining the meet in like their Chromebooks in the classroom with the teacher in person, and then like someone speaks into it, and then there's a ringing in the feedback, and it takes like a few seconds to shut it down, and then no one understands what's going on, and it's this whole back and forth that happens in almost every class. I don't know if that's the same at the high school, but that just happens constantly. And so I think better training for the teachers on how to balance like the three groups and how to use the technology and how, you know, how to all like do it. Like it's that's one thing for me. I think better training for teachers and better resources for teachers is like a big step that can improve it a huge amount. Yeah.
Go ahead, Graham.
I guess about the feedback and the computers and the screens in class, some of my teachers have asked if it would be okay with the class that's virtual to be put on the board so the whole class can see them. And so basically then the teacher, and maybe they would have to be on a computer, but that way then all of the students don't have to just be at the desk with earbuds and just looking at a screen when they're in a class together. And so when I kind of think of like sci-fi movies when there's like a bunch of people sitting on the bridge of a ship, but then they're all like talking to like holograms or something, or a larger screen. And at least in my classes, nobody's been displayed on the board, like all the virtual people, because I'm half like in-person student, like half in-person and virtual. And I guess the biggest thing for me, at least being in-person in class, is trying to like stitch together the virtual and the in-person groups, because they can kind of feel disconnected sometimes. Like if we're splitting up into breakout groups, the people in the classroom, it's easier for them to just break out in physical groups and social distancing. But then for the virtual people to just go into separate digital breakout rooms. And so I think if somehow the technology allowed for the group to be connected as like one class, but not through like individual screens, that could be really beneficial in the classroom.
To add on to what Graham said, I think that for most students, and I think teachers as well, the goal is to let the in-person students like not have to deal with like Google Meet or something like that. And where the teacher can teach to like everyone at once, and like there is interaction between the people at home and the people in school. So I don't really know how much of this technology works, but it seems to me like a good idea would be to have a microphone in the class that can pick up the voices of the students in the class. Because one thing that's really hard for teachers to deal with in classes where they have to teach both in person and online is that when in-person students want to talk and like the teacher has decided that it's not necessary for them to be like on the Google Meet, then the people at home can't really hear them. And then it's up to the teacher to like have to restate everything, and that just makes it harder for everyone. So I think that a microphone that can pick up the whole class would be very useful. I think a camera setup that allows the people at home to see the whole like front of the class where the teacher is presenting, and possibly even the whole class, would really, really help. So we can know what's going on in class and not just like the narrow window like through the computer camera, because oftentimes like if a teacher is presenting, then they have to set up their computer weirdly. That means they can't see us. So we, yeah, I've noticed that in most of my classes, the teachers can't see the online people, which I think is a problem, at least when they're presenting. So having a camera that shows the whole class, or at least where the teacher is presenting, so that the teacher that can connect to the Meet, so that the teacher doesn't have to use their own computer for that. And that way, hopefully the teachers would be able to see this online students, and interaction between everyone would be much easier.
Rob, I'd want to thank our students. It's very helpful as a faculty member trying to work with students facing these same issues of how to engage and how to transfer my curriculum online in the same way, not in the same way because it's not going to happen, in a way that's engaging, right? In the way that's still informative and brings people in. And there's a famous saying in teaching that students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's a much tougher way to do in a virtual world for many of us. And so the idea about technology, I think, is absolutely essential. I'm thinking something that Dr. Brown said when he first came here 10 years ago, that the pencil was a technological innovation. And at that point in time, I laughed at him, like, okay, slow that idea down. And now we're in a moment where I understand what he was talking about, right? That the pencil sort of changed pedagogy and curriculum and how we engaged. We're forced to do this in 6 months to try to figure out how to have better technology. And the ideas that you're sharing are phenomenal. And it makes me think about what I could do in my, as I think I hear people calling it, high flex classroom, right? So sort of a quasi in-person and quasi virtual classroom for students. And that's going to take a great deal of changing. So I better appreciate that, right? The idea of, quality microphones, better equipment, higher quality laptops for students can have higher processing speeds and better connection to Wi-Fi. I think all that absolutely makes sense. The idea about better training for teachers, I think we all understand and appreciate that. I'm also aware that, again, in my own role as an IC faculty member, we're talking about 6 months. And so we've been trying to do a lot of training and a lot of issues that have taken us years. And we're still trying to figure out what is the best training that teachers need, and to make sure it's divergent, because some folks are at different places at different times. And so I really appreciate that. I would humbly say, as a former educator at LACS, who spent 7 years at LACS and then as a board member, and again, I say this with great humility, but LACS actually has a higher per pupil expenditure than other school districts in the other schools in the district. It may not feel that way. Again, I've spent 7 years there. I know exactly what it feels like. It doesn't mean that everyone gets what they need, but we just have to have some conversation about how to make sure we get teachers what they need. And we're new to this. And so what you're sharing is very helpful. So thank you for that. I'm going to keep thinking about what does that mean? And particularly the idea about longer hours and longer class periods probably takes away from our ability to retain things that may be important, right? And so we may have to think that model again. If I can, humbly, Patty, your slide deck has been making me think about how I'm gonna teach my 5-year-old to read in different ways. So one, I wanna know if it's available, right? And how we get access to it. And then second of all, what has been the biggest transition for you as an educator to go from this in-person to virtual world? Like, what has been the thing that you've had to struggle with the most, if I can humbly ask that question?
Thanks so much for the question. There have been several hidden joys and also several hidden challenges. For me, the biggest joy, hands down, is seeing my students interact with their families. In a traditional setting, I would see that maybe if somebody gets picked up early or at a special event, if they're able to attend the special event, or maybe if they're picked up and I'm able to catch a grandparent at the back door, but I see that every single day. So that has been definitely a hidden joy. A hidden challenge for me has been the time constraint. So we're in the process of building the plane while we're flying it, right? So that idea of how can we identify, not just me, but as a district, identify what are those big rocks or what are those power standards collectively as a district to know that I'm not in isolation identifying for my first graders, but I know the first graders at South Hill, Enfield, Bell Sherman, BJM, all of the schools in our district are identifying those same big rocks or power standards that we are going to address. That for me has been the biggest challenge so far, is finding some sense of cohesion and making sure that I am doing what other teachers are identifying as the same power standards.
Hi, this is Moira Lang, and I'm hearing echo. But I want to thank Patty, and as often happens when I see elementary teachers present, I'm just in awe of that. I was a teacher at IHS for 25 years. I was a secondary English teacher for 35 total. But unlike Sean, I'm not teaching now. And so a lot of the things that you're talking about, the students are talking about, Patty's talking about, it's just, I have no concrete way to really visualize it. I really appreciate the students from LACS speaking for their teachers and for the challenges that they're seeing their teachers have. And those are challenges that I have great difficulty imagining how I would be handling them. So, we're hearing from the students, and I really appreciate, some very, very concrete suggestions about what's needed to make it better. Another thing that I heard from listening to both Graham and Andrew is what we've been coming up against in such a graphic way, is that people have different needs and different responses to the same situation. So, some students are doing very well with distance learning. Others, it's not working for at all, and vice versa. And so, we've always had a notion of differentiation, but now it's like really sort of in front of us of this, these two, or, in some cases, really three different ways, like secondary is talking about with the AB days and then the all distance learning. So we're talking about, the fundamental experience being very, very different for groups of students. And then, and it's works for some and doesn't work for others, and sorting that through so that people can get what they need. It's all very, very challenging. And, all of you are being very thoughtful about offering some concrete suggestions about how we can continue to build this plane while we're flying it so that we don't crash. Thanks.
Thanks, Moira. And Patty, you're teaching a blended class, correct, from Enfield and South Hill? I mean, so this is a group that's, just clarity. How many students do you have in your online class? And that is indeed a blended class from Enfield and South Hill. Just a little insight would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm happy to share. My class makeup changed on October 5th. I started off teaching a multi-age classroom of just South Hill kindergarten and first grade. And on October 5th, we did a great changeover. So right now I have 25 students, about half from Enfield, half from South Hill. I do most of my instruction in a small group setting. So my South Hill students start at 8 in the morning, and we have various small groups. We complete the instruction, and then we share specials with our Enfield cohort. We do a transition activity after specials with our Enfield cohort, and then our South Hill students transition to their asynchronous bingo board and seesaw activities, while I continue on synchronously with the Enfield crew.
Patty, there is opportunity for the kids from Enfield and South Hill to interact a bit online. I mean, so they are getting to know each other, right?
They sure are, and it is great fun to see them interacting during specials together. They also we're all one class on Seesaw. We have the ability to check in with each other in that way virtually as well.
No, that's great, Patty. And I'm in my office and I have no snacks. I got really distracted with popcorn a while ago. So
it does make us hungry. It does.
No, exactly. I mean, it's really, really appreciate your work and outstanding effort. So, thank you very much. Other questions from the board?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. Just to go back to some of the things about on the secondary level and some of the suggestions that are made. Is just to say again, I think it's really important that we hear so that we can adapt. And I think that the more we know what's working and what's not working, the easier it will be to kind of adapt how one goes about it. And it seems like some of the technology issues in terms of feedback, like that seems like pretty low hanging fruit. So like that one seems kind of interesting to know. But the other thing that's really sticking out for me is like, how do you make that in-person experience not the exact same thing that you do at home, but just in person? And I think that seems something that's solvable, but it'd be really interesting to kind of think about what kinds of solutions, kind of after hearing this kind of feedback, what kind of solutions kind of come up with that.
And I think, we do need to move on eventually, but Graham and Andrew, thank you for presenting. But Graham, I believe you had another point you wanted to make before you move on.
Yeah, I think this was in response to something Adam had said, or it was maybe someone else about stitching together the virtual and in-person. At least something that's happened kind of naturally in most of my classes is like the use of the chat function, in either students just kind of stepping up and doing it like naturally, like nobody told them to, or the teacher also doing it, is just recording like bullet points of whatever's going on in the class. So maybe in-person students or just quick bullet notes to send into the chat about like what somebody's talking about in the classroom. Virtual people can't hear well, or the teacher just sort of like so-and-so is talking and they're responding to like this person's point, and just to try and make like stitching together the virtual and in-person. So then everybody can have the same understanding of what's going on. And it's worked really well, and it's been helpful.
Well, thank you, Graham. Anyone else right now before we let Patty's got another long day ahead, I think, and students have places to be and go. Anything else right now? Well, we will move on, but Patty, obviously, thank you again. I always say the best meetings we have is when we hear from teachers and we hear from students. So this has been a great meeting that's really been very, very helpful. We look forward to more communication and hearing from all of you. Adam and your other reps, we will, well, you're still here. You're part of the meeting, and so we're going to continue. So Graham, Andrew, great. Patty, thank you very, very much. And we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which is health insurance. So we'll move on to that. And I think, Bob, can we address the issues?
Sure, thanks, Rob. Tonight's meeting is really to vote on the resolution that's before the board to make a transition from our current Hartford plan to the Aetna plan. We spent some time over the past week speaking with some retirees and developing a resolution that seems to have put some of their angst to rest. And I think the resolution that's before the board tonight really settles the outstanding questions that we had. There's no presentation tonight on this. It's just up for a board vote.
Are there any further questions or discussion that we need to get into at this time, or statements that folks wish to make at this time?
I feel it's important as part of the public record. I was waiting for Moira to jump in, and maybe, sorry to put you on blast, Moira. I think it's important for part of the public record to know that we have been responsive to the numerous emails that we received, talking with our legal counsel, talking with our HR department, and ensuring that the what was stated when we changed from the last health insurance plan would remain, that it would be equal or better. And that phrase has been something that we have been committed to and will be committed to. And so I want to make sure that that is part of the minutes of this board meeting and part of a recognition that our retirees know that we are absolutely aware of and committed to.
Yeah, I couldn't unmute fast enough to say something. And I just want to thank, people for communicating with us and asking questions. It has led us as board members, certainly me, to dig deeper into the subject and the issues and come to a better understanding than I had before. So I'm thankful that that process has occurred over the last several weeks, is really when it's heated up. And I encourage retirees to continue to communicate with us if they're experiencing difficulties or if they have questions about this, because we really we want to make it work. We want to deliver on what was promised, and so we need to understand what's going on.
And to that point, Maura, our commitment to our retirees has not changed. Frankly, our commitment to the taxpayers has not changed, and we will. By making this transition to Aetna for a Medicare, well, it's a Medicare Advantage plan, but it will be will be beneficial to our retirees. For many, their premiums will go down. Their coverages will stay in place. We guarantee by our language that anything that our retirees need for their healthcare needs, we are self-insured, and the district is here to back you up and make sure that all your needs are met. And that is our commitment. That's the commitment via contractually back when our retirees were hired and worked in the district for a long period of time. And that has not changed. Our community is supportive, and we're doing our due diligence to make sure you have the best healthcare, an outstanding healthcare program. And we're mindful that we have to balance the cost of that. And if we can have a better product for less money, less premiums to our retirees, those who have to pay premiums, then that will be that meets our criteria of doing the best for everyone. And so tonight we have an opportunity to do that. And so we'll glad to hear a motion for the resolution that is in front of us and on our agenda in front of me. So we're going to need a motion to approve this resolution.
I'm just trying to find what I need to say it. So I will move the resolution of the Board of Education of the Ithaca City School District to enroll Medicare eligible retirees into the Aetna Medicare Advantage Plan.
I'll second.
Moved by Maura, second by Pat. Sean, I don't believe we need to read the fairly, there are 5 whereases and then therefore. I don't know that we need to read it all. It's part of the public record. But Sean, correct me if needed.
Nope, we can say as stated in the agenda, and we've made the one correction that needed to be made. It's a long evening, y'all.
Thank you, Sean. And that is part of the transcript. And so, Tricia, if glad to go ahead. It's been moved, seconded. Any other questions right now? Speak now. If not, then Tricia, please call the roll.
Okay. Rob Ainsley,
Yes.
Sean Eversley Bradwell,
Yes.
Eldred Harris,
Yes.
Nicole Lefebvre, Moira Lang,
Yes.
Chris Malcolm,
Yes.
Ann Reichland,
Yes.
Pat Waslaw.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone. Motion passed, resolution passes, and we look forward to the transition to the Aetna plan. And so thank you, everyone, for your work. Bob, Chris at the finance work session, appreciate your efforts, Amanda, et cetera, and Kate and everyone. And I believe we're going to move on to a discussion of the safety plan, but I'm not sure it's going to be, safety plan is fairly lengthy. But if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Dan Bryman is going to be involved with that. Isn't that your bailiwick? Is that a word, more?
Yep. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. I'm not going to go over all 80 pages. I'm sorry to disappoint everybody about that. But what I did want to say was some of the things that I've done working with principals and some of the New York State reopen plan guidance, and I've used some of that language to incorporate into the plan. And I also want to value all the great work that's gone into this. So this year I worked with building principals, updated them on the New York State reopening plan guidance. And this year the guidance we were given was how a school should modify their drill procedures to minimizing risk. And we've added a few protocols that are different. The And one of the things that it states is that in an actual emergency, like an evacuation or lockdown, the most eminent concern, of course, is to get to safety. So maintaining social distance in an actual emergency, like an evacuation or lockdown, may not be possible and shouldn't be the first priority. But I shared with the principals, and they have worked on their building plans, that they should conduct drills on a staggered schedule where classrooms evacuate separately all at once. Appropriate distance should be kept between students to the evacuation site for lockdowns. Similarly, lockdown drills, classroom setting, students should maintain distance. They should, of course, wear masks. Lockdown drills should also be on a staggered schedule. We want to conduct the lockdown drills in classrooms with hiding and shelter. We want to show students, we want to give them an overview on how to shelter or hide when we're doing a drill, but obviously we don't want them in close proximity when we're doing a drill. So I made a number of changes on a few different pages. I don't know if you want me to go through that. That included this language. It is just up for discussion at this point. It is not hoping to do a public hearing at the next board meeting, and then the timelines are that the earliest date it could be approved would be 30 days after November 10th. So I just wanted to share all that and open it up for discussion if possible.
Well, thanks, Dan, and right. And the main point is, at some point, we do indeed need to adopt the safety plan. And I was wondering when is the last date when is that timeline? And we typically don't try to put it off, but it can sometimes end up off. But go ahead.
Yeah, we are a little off the timeline, unfortunately. But I think if we do the public hearing on November 10th, we can adopt it 30 days after that. I can say that I've worked closely with building principals to make these changes in all their plans as well.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate your efforts.
Yeah.
Sean, go ahead.
So I know there's a lot taking place and going on. Historically speaking, the safety plan has something that's been sort of run through policy prior to a public hearing. If we are not beyond what our legal mandate is to have it approved, I still would recommend that, just in terms of some language. Last time we've gone through this, there was a significant conversation about the possibility of trauma that's experienced with young folks when they participate in shelter in place trials, whatever you want to call them, right, drills, and having some additional conversation about that. So we don't have to have that conversation this evening. And my policy colleagues can let me know if I'm mistaken about that, but we've sort of tried to go through this. And I also understand that there is a need to have this adopted sooner rather than later for a number of reasons. And so the goal is not to slow the process down. And so appreciate your work with reaching out with principals and other folks in the community to make sure that we have a plan that is solid. I will say that some of the language we have at times found the best way may be to describe it as problematic, given some of the ways in which we are trying to move as a school district, and compatibility with making sure that all of our young people and our staff and faculty are safe. So it's a lot of work to try to measure that language in that regard.
So I suggest we take an opportunity to go through those 80 pages, and also always look forward to a policy meeting two, maybe one to go through, but anyway. So there's, unless anyone has significant or, well, just questions right now, we can dig into it and get it done for you then, or get it done for the district, obviously. So Dr. Brown, if Dr. Brown's still around. Anything else, Dr. Brown? Oh, there you are, Dr. Brown.
It's been another good day. Looking forward to tomorrow. Thanks for the opportunity.
Dr. Brown, if my math is right, we're coming up on 2 of those 90-minute classes back to back without a break. Is that about 3 hours? Is that right? And
Yeah.
Curriculum was an hour before that. So just folks know that there's been board members that have been at this almost 4 hours now. So that's a good school day, right? Is that about a school? These days virtually. So, that's for us, that's a lot of work done today. Anything for anyone else right now? Dr. Brown, Lily, anyone? So, and if there's nothing else, upcoming dates, Sean, I think if you want to highlight that next week there's no policy, and for the reasons.
Yes, our normally scheduled policy meeting is the first Tuesday of every month. In consultation with our board colleagues, we have decided to reschedule that policy committee meeting, given the fact that it's election day, and we want to both support people's ability to get out and vote and not try to have them be preoccupied with a policy committee. Not to say that work isn't important, but we'll reschedule that. And folks should definitely spend their time. I know that we were having a conversation with Eldred Harris earlier today, who took a couple of hours to vote earlier, if I'm not mistaken, Eldred, when you were up by the airport. So it also may mean a long day for folks who are planning to vote next Tuesday. So we're gonna reschedule the policy committee meeting. We'll let Tricia make an announcement to the community about when that is, but please take the day to vote and to rest if you get a chance.
And Sean, I would certainly recommend that HR be postponed.
It is being postponed. HR is postponed as well.
Very good. Just want to make sure we got to that. So now we're, as far as I'm concerned, we are done for the evening, and we touched on next week. And so now we can, well, is everybody good? Pat, you good? Everything okay? All right. So, and thank you for all your work advocating for all that we're supposed to be doing anyway. But there's work ongoing, and I know you're involved with. Chris, E, everybody. Dr. Brown, thank you for all your efforts. And I have been by the football field, the Moresco Stadium fairly often, and it's great to see turf where it's supposed to be. And things are coming along. High school is coming along. It will be done at some point, and we look forward to that day as well. So thanks, everybody. If you don't need anything from me, well, I'll go home. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.